What's going on, everybody? This is Evony Jesus coming to you from server 1143. Today we're going to be going over some reports from this past SVS this weekend. Got several things to go over with you. First off, going to be looking at a defense report that kind of reinforces the ideas from the last video. Got a couple of just strictly layers marches in there, and then several actual reinforcement marches in there, and had somebody absolutely splat their rear end off on one of our biggest players for next to no loss. So we're going to start by looking at that video. And so we were up against a server that had some pretty significant power. Zelzios here in on the left side of the screen, the defender, is the biggest player on our server. Sonic here on the right from EVO Alliance was one of the biggest players on their server. To set the stage, we were in the process of attempting to rally one of the slightly smaller folks from their server. I think he was about 3.5 billion that we were trying to get a rally off on, and unfortunately the dude kept moving, but we were prepared for some defenses, for some people to port back on us, and Sonic happened to be one of those. He decided he was going to target Zell, who, as I said, is our biggest player, and see what damage he can do. And as you can see here on the report, he did next to nothing. He lost 300 and almost 10 million power compared to about 67, 68 million power that we as an alliance lost from the hit. This is a pretty ugly report. He only killed 714,000 of Zell's troops and only wounded 411,000 of the reinforcements that we had in her. So pretty bad report in terms of offense, but pretty fantastic in terms of defense. So we're going to go into the battle details and take a look at what happened and why it happened. And so you can see here that Zell's got her main troops, and the first and foremost thing here that really helped us be successful is that Zell ghosted all of her T14 calves, all of her T13 calves, and the vast majority of her T12 calves in advance of taking this hit. We anticipated it was quite likely that she would be attacked, and so she took the precaution of doing so in advance, and that went incredibly well. Personally, I would have probably left 25,000 T14 and T13 calves in the city, but the overall effect was pretty much the same. We just would have wanted those 2 additional layers. And so if we look here, Zell's troops actually didn't do all that much. Nobody's troops did. This was a combined effort. She probably took out about 40% of the attacking march. Her ground doing the bulk of the work, and a little bit coming in from her T14 siege, getting 317,000 killed. T14 ground, 115,000. T13 ground, 255,000, and all the while sustaining very, very minimal losses. The only place down here that we really had Zell take any damage was her T12 mounted that were left. She lost, and then her T11 calves that remained in the city were lost. But even beyond that point, she didn't take any wounded on her mounted troops below T11. And the reason for that is that we had 9 players reinforcing her. And so out of these reinforcement marches, myself, Ion, Rizeo, Slim, Rahul, and Vixum all had PvP marches reinforcing Zell. And with the exception of Rahul, everybody here had a ground march reinforcing her. And then in addition to that, we had Purge, Nani, Original TNT, and Wild, who had submitted either partial PvP marches or straight layers marches like we went over in our previous video. And so we're going to look and see that, again, the overwhelming majority, we didn't have a ton of killed on any one player, that each march kind of took a different portion of the attack. Nani here, as we said, sent just a layers march, and really it didn't do anything at all other than distract the troops that were attacking. Ion here had, again, couple troops coming in, ground troops. He probably had 250, 300,000 killed troops and had those layers all the way through. Same for Slim. His troops had 100,000 on T13 that he killed, 245,000 on his T12. That sentiment follows all the way through. And so, again, TNT is one of the folks who had just a standard layers march. And so the reason that this report looked as bad as it did for Sonic here, it's kind of twofold. One, he sent way, way, way too many T14 archers. And so those things got targeted immediately, and they only killed 434,000 troops in the attack, whereas he lost 2.1 million of them on the attack itself. The further down he went, the better it went. So his T13 archers killed another 426,000, while they lost 410,000. And then his T12s, he killed 300,000 to the 210 that he lost. And so what this shows us is that the layers on all the defending marches here, between Nani and everything in my march, everything in Ion's march, and every other march that we had in here, every layer that was in there was holding up these T14 archers from doing anything. And so while they're distracted targeting troops that are T12 calves, T11 calves, and the folks, or the troops that are lower than that, the T14 ground in my march and in Vixen's march and in Zell's keep itself were all responding and attacking back on these T14 ranged. And so that's why as you go from T14 range, which had a really, really poor performance, I mean, they killed one troop for every 5 that died, you go down to the T13 archers, and it's about a 1-to-1 swap. And so those T13 archers did not get engaged by anything until those T14 archers were cleared. And so they just kept on firing. And so the T13 archers and the T12 archers had more rounds of battle to attack on. And so that's why their kill ratios were closer to 1 or 1.5 for the T12s. And so his T14s really didn't do very much. And because he went so heavy on his T14s in that march, those 2.1 million T14s all died in the very first round of battle. The very first round of battle, they all died. And so the T13s got 2 rounds of battle, and the T12s got 3 rounds of battle in which to shoot at the opposing troops. As far as the range mechanics of which troop was being engaged by which, I honestly don't know enough about the strict battle mechanics to be able to say, but the lower you get down in the tiers, the more rounds of battle they have, assuming there's enough of a layer there to survive what's in the keep. And so that's why your T12 archers have a 1.5 kill to death ratio compared to the T13s that were barely above 1 and the T14s that had a 0.2 kill death ratio. And so those layers that were reinforcing the actual PvP marches and the layers marches provided more rounds of battle on our side so that his T14 archers could not engage with any of the lower calves that Zell had in her keep. And so like we said, we showed down here, her T10 calves didn't even get wounded. They didn't kill. They weren't engaged in the battle at all. Same thing for T9 all the way down here to T8 and so on and so forth. None of those troops got engaged in the battle at all because those T14 archers died in the very first round of battle. And so that is one thing in particular that every single layer in every single march that was reinforcing her, every layer in my march that was a PvP march, and every layer in Purge Nani's march that was just a layers march, were increasing the amount of battle that was taking place, the number of rounds that were taking place in that battle, in order to make sure that Zell did not take any damage. And like we saw on the cover of the report, Sonic lost 310 million power to the combined 65 to 70 million that we lost as an alliance on this hit. And so it really shows the importance of reinforcements on defense, and the same principle applies on offense, that the more layers that get involved in the battle, especially when it's against a single target, the safer your troops are going to be, and the more damage that they're going to be able to do. And so another thing that I wanted to go through here is two different personal attack reports that I had in SVS. And so we've got one here that I actually ended up losing the attack. The reason for that is that I did not have my debuff generals in my subs. I was trying to level up some duty gens, so my debuffs were not where they should have been. But this person had really, really poor defending buffs. They were not above 500 on any category of anything, and I hit him with 1173 archer attack and a full PvP march. Now, the reason that his buffs were that low is because he did not have a wall gen on. It had been killed while he was ghosting previously, and I managed to catch him. And so if I'd had a little bit more debuffs, I would have cleared him in one hit. But he was set up with a T1 wall, or what was supposed to be a T1 wall. It didn't end up working for him. He had 26 million T1 cavalry in his city, and with no wall gen, those are entirely ineffective. But even if he'd had his proper wall gen on, his wall gen was not refined for that T1 wall defense, and so those are just like cutting through paper with a pair of scissors. They're not going to do anything if your wall general is not refined for that. And even if it had been, I still would have gone points positive on the hit, especially if I'd had debuffs, because he was not set up with enough layers. He was a little bit top heavy other than those T1 calves that he had, and his wall gen was just not where it needed to be in order to be able to take a hit like that. And then we've also got a second one here that I did win because I had already, I had put my sub generals back in my subs. And again, this is a relatively small report. I took 205 million off of this player, lost 27 million in the process. Again, was hitting at 1174, and this person did have a wall gen on, but it was not a very well-built wall general. He probably had his mounted gear on, as you can see, the 676 mounted attack. Even so, I took 50% off of just about everything in his city, with the exception of a few things like siege HP and looks like ground troop defense I didn't quite cut in half. Few specific things that didn't quite get cut in half, but for the most part debuffed the crap out of him, so he wasn't able to mount an effective defense. And so the reason that I show you guys these reports is that when I talk about, especially later on, how it is not a defensive game at the moment, that you want to be able to continue ghosting for as long as possible, that's what I'm talking about. You have to have a very, very specific setup for different types of defense. And if you're not set up in a way to be able to take hits like Zell did, then there's no point, because you're not going to get a positive point trade on the hit, and you're better off having very effective PvP marches that you can ghost quickly and still have space to send a layers march or two to other players. That's going to do you a lot better than trying to play defense with a half-baked wall general that you don't have enough troops to support to begin with. And so if we look at my generals, I'm going to go straight over to the military tab so we don't have to scroll through everything. I've got my Minamoto here. Still a work in progress, but decent refines on the one piece of Civ gear I've got here. Pretty dang good refines on the Ares bow. And then a couple pieces here partially refined, not refined at all, not refined at all. Still a work in progress, but you're a lot better served having that and then not needing your wall general. My wall gen is just in full Achaemenid gear and has absolutely no refines. I haven't bothered. I haven't wasted the refined stones on there. Those are a precious commodity, and I have no intention of playing defense. So, George Dewey here, formerly Joseph Johnston, he just sits on the wall and usually gets killed in SVS because I'm ghosting. I don't play defense, and I don't recommend that you guys do either. That really wraps up today's video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. If there's other stuff you'd like to see going forward, please send me a message either in-game or in the comments section, and I will be absolutely thrilled to go over some different things. Thanks, and I'll see y'all soon.